Everybody, I'm Herb Trollock. He's Dave Pensado. In a second, we're going to have a conversation with Jason LaRocca. But first, let's take a chance to connect in person. First opportunity, Saturday, May 19th at Imstafesta LA. Meet the brilliant, super hot James Fauntleroy. You see him right here. That's going to take place at the SAE campus in Los Angeles, 11:30 a.m. You want to get your seat. Get there early. I'll be moderating. It's a great chance to learn, laugh, and hear from a certified Spotify genius. You can sign up at imsta.org. Remember, 11:30, May 19th, Saturday at the SAE LA campus. Don't miss that. If you're down Nashville way on Saturday, June 30th, Dave and I will be there hosting Summer NAMM's keynote speech. That's going to be at 12 noon. Our guest is truly an audio renaissance man, the one, the only John McBride. Think about this. John's built an award-winning school in a little over 4 years. He's built one of the best studios in the world. He's got a major touring and rental company, an all-star collection of all kinds of mics and gears. It's unbelievable. And he still goes out almost every weekend and does front-of-house sound. This is a guy you want to learn from. He's true. We call him the Tennessee Titan. He's really an audio titan, so you don't want to miss him. We'll be doing a lot of hanging. We'll be doing a lot of talking. We might be doing some giveaways. There might be some extra special guests. And our good friends at NAMM are going to give you an opportunity to get in that day for free. Where do you go? You go to bit.ly/Pensado Summer. Sign up quickly. I'm telling you, there's about 130 seats. They're going to go fast. Don't delay for a second. It will be special. We might end up with a couple of special guests as well to add to this. But John McBride is somebody you can learn from and really an amazing career. So go sign up at that link. Thanks to NAMM for providing that opportunity. And also thanks to our partners, 1500 or Nothing, the Blackbird Academy, Westlake Pro, Avid, Warm Audio, Groove 3, and Fab Factory. Dave, what's in this week's ITO?
I'm going to share something with you guys. I was working with some keyboards and synths, and I found some neat things. Check it out. I wanted to share this with you. I've been working on a new project called Big Frida. One of my favorite producers, Mike Omega, is just putting his foot into these productions. The EP is about to come out. I'm going to play you a keyboard part that I struggled to find a spot for it in the mix. I can't play the mix for you yet, but you'll see it on Spotify and Tidal real soon. Here's what I was given. So I widened it a little bit with the Ozone Imager. Beautiful, beautiful plugin. Now I'm paralleling into my effects. Some of you guys might not yet have been doing this long enough to understand when you put things on the sound itself and when you parallel into it. When you put it on the information itself, for example, here's the track that we're working on. And if you put it on this track, these plugins, it's a whole different sound. And to me, I don't have the control I have. So I'm more often than not, if I'm putting an effect on something, I'm paralleling the effect, particularly reverbs and delays and things like that. Now, what I've decided was I needed a little bit of chorus. And chorus is a cheap way to get a little bit of a doubling effect, makes things a little more interesting. So here we go. Okay, that's the part that we're doing. I'm going to get you located here. Really cool part. I can't wait for you to hear it in the song. Here's with the the chorus. Now this is by Akon. It's called Multiply. I think this is still a free plugin. I know when I got it, it was free, and I believe it's still free. It gives it the ability to take over the little space it was designed to be in. It's designed not to be a feature part. It's designed not to be a pad or something like that. It's designed to be a rhythmic part. It's got a big rhythmic component to it, but yet it's also got a harmonic component. So let's see what else we can do. This plugin at one time was free also. This is a plate, a really good plate by Sound Toys. And then I'm a big fan of modulating the tails of reverbs, particularly digital reverbs. Why, you say? Well, reverbs in the 70s and 60s were mostly made of a lot of delays, and to smooth those delays out and turn them into a reverb that the ear and the brain determined as a continuous sound, modulation was used to mask that issue. And so it made things smoother, and it was harder to detect the individual delays. But it's a sound that we all grew to like. And so here's a little modulation. Without it, with it. You know what, Nico? I'm gonna try this on some vocals. I bet that would be great on vocals. You know, it could be good on everything. Maybe not percussive things so much. Maybe it might be. I don't know. Check it out. Let me know.
Imagine scoring mixer, producer, engineer, even a punk rocker. Let's welcome to the place, Jason LaRocca. Hey, man.
Hey, Herb.
Welcome.
Thanks,
Good to see you.
Hi, Dave.
Happy birthday, too. Apparently that's coming up. Well, by the time they air the show, it's somewhere in the time continuum. You know? So you guys partying. So where does a guy who in 2004 was defiant and angry and punk and doing 300 dates a year touring decide to come do all the things you're doing now?
Well, you know, we were very DIY, obviously. So, you know, we didn't really have the money to pay for a producer and an engineer and a studio to do our stuff at first. So I kind of took it upon myself to, you know, work all summer and save up and buy a Mackie console and a tape machine. And I put it, my brother and I had adjacent rooms in the house. So he set up his room as the control room, and I set up my room as the live room. And we dug a hole through the two rooms and then, you know, put the snakes through that. And then that just kind of, I guess I ended up being better at that than playing guitar in the band, you know. But that's kind of where it started.
Lots of careers start that way. You just, by necessity, right?
Yeah, Lord Algie and a lot of the greats.
Yeah, a ton of folks. Yeah. What's crazy is, I've seen a lot of the movies that you've done stuff on. The Accountant, Blockers, Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot, all that stuff is just stuff that I've seen. And it's interesting because the art form is both subtle and critical. Like, you can't have sound get in the way of things. It's got to enhance things and do stuff. So like with Whiskey, Fox, being in war zones and being in other stuff and capturing things like that.
Yeah.
Each movie presents a particular set of different challenges, correct?
Sure.
And are you left alone to figure out that process? Because usually there's a fairly big committee.
Yeah, and you know, I know Alan's talked about this before too, Alan Meyerson, who, you know, I think is an amazing engineer, and I really look up to him. But you know, the music, it's a long process, obviously, from start to finish of the film, and the music is put in. Oh, I think it's going to work here. It's going to work in this scene. It's going to, you know, so it's carved a lot over months, sometimes years, as far as what they want the music to sort of do.
And it can change.
And it can change because they can recut the film. They can, you know, and all that. Well, so as we're making the music and it's coming to a composer to actually start writing the music, you know, he may spend months mocking things up, as it were, with synthesizers or sampled strings and stuff like that. And all the while, the film's still being recut and that sort of thing. When it comes to me, I'm pretty far along the process at that point. You know, the composer's gotten things signed off by the directors and the producers and that sort of thing, and it's more or less, you know, this is pretty much where it's starting, where it's ending, how it needs to ebb and flow around dialogue, but we just need it now to sound great and wider and all that.
In that context, that's you as the mixer, obviously not as a composer or producer or something.
Right,
This
exactly.
is you as the sound mixer.
Right.
And are you mixing the picture?
Yeah, a lot of the
Sometimes.
time. A lot of the time. I mean, with film, like with Blockers, for instance, the involvement I had on that was actually I did sort of mix that to picture, but at the same time, that was just kind of sort of like songs. They wanted it to be like you know, jams, like you know, the Ill Communication Beastie Boys record, those jams they have on that record. They kind of wanted that vibe of just like once we start, we're kind of just going, you know, and it's fun and it's funny, you know what I mean? So there wasn't a lot to have to worry about as far as dialogue on some of those scenes. But, you know, like something like, you know, The Accountant, that's a lot more carved in and around the really constructed scenes where there's moments where the sound effects are really heavy, and then they want to just totally get away with all the sound effects are gone, and now it's just about bringing the music into the film, and then it's all focus on the emotion and the music.
You mentioned dialogue. How do you keep, at that point in the time, how do you keep the dialogue out of the way of the music out of the way of the dialogue? I thought it would come later. Do you send stems off to be
always
added
stems
to the movie?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
they can have a dialogue up and down themselves.
Well, since I don't mix the dialogue and I'm just mixing the music, I have to obviously, you know, the dialogue is king, and what we're doing, you know, musically has to obviously fit the scene and what it is. So I give them maybe a dialogue reference of how I was mixing to the dialogue, but they don't use that. They take.
But you don't have vocals in your music mostly.
Sometimes if it's a song. Like that movie Joy, the Jennifer Lawrence movie, there's a scene where she's singing with her husband. They just got married and they sing Something Stupid together, and that was a music moment that I basically mix her voice and I think it's Edgar Ramirez. And it's there's no sound effects, there's no dialogue in the scene, it's just basically my music mix. So when it's a song, like you're saying, sometimes it'll be up to me to mix that.
How long are the pieces of music, and how many do you do, and how long does it take you?
I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, it's, you know, the average probably, I'd say, it depends on the film, really. Like we just finished this animated film that's coming out later this year that was wall to wall, and the film is 90 minutes long, and there's like 89 minutes of music. I mean,
You're kidding. Wow.
I mean, it's just the whole way through.
Yeah.
So typically when it comes to me, they're pretty far along in the process and they just want music right away. So it's, you know, give us everything you can by, you know, the next day.
Yeah.
So it's typically, you know, we try and get through 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes, which is almost an entire reel usually in a day.
Do you get paid by the bar, by the quarter note, or by the hour?
I wish.
Do you get paid?
That's the orchestrators
I mean, do they give
get
you a
paid by the
lump
bar.
sum and then you got to do all that stuff?
You know, it's.
I mean, don't give me personal information, but I do want to know.
It depends on the process. I mean, sometimes we're paid just, that's a lump sum, like here, this is all I get. Like, you know, like a documentary like Icarus, for instance. That
Oscar-winning Icarus.
That's right. Which, you know, we had no idea that was going to happen, of course. But that was the kind of film where everybody was just doing it out of passion, you know, because we all sort of thought, you know, this is a cool story. It's, you know, a very shocking story, and you know, everybody was just sort of in it to be just a part of it. That's the kind of film where you're just sort of doing it just because you want to be a part of it, you know, and you want to do that. And then there's other films that have larger budgets that say, hey, well, you know, we'll pay you X amount an hour, and you're just on for the ride and you're doing it.
Right.
And you know, so they're all different. It's not always the same, you know.
I'm conflicted and confused why movies and the soundtracks for movies are so adamant about live strings. I mean, I'm not trying to get any musicians out of work, but it seems like live strings. I mean, virtual strings are just as good. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't go to Abbey Road and Air in London and do live strings, but what is it from live strings that your world worships so much?
I think the biggest thing is, there's been strings in movies for forever, and it's lasted, since the beginning of sound and film.
They work in movies for sure.
And it's just that thing. You get that intangible emotional quality out of it that just heightens the emotional tone of a film, whether it be happy, fun, or sad, or angry, or whatever. It can do so many things. Strings can just play any one of those emotions. And so when you get just amazing, stellar musicians in a room together to do that, you can just cover so many bases with it.
And I'm also, the one or two times I've had a chance to work in something that music was a integral part of. So, and what I'm referring to specifically was I had an opportunity to deal with a Broadway play. And so in a Broadway play environment, which I've seen somewhat in film, what people are used to traditionally there, that's what they revert to, no matter how much the technology has changed.
Sure.
So this was 2003 or whatever. Literally, the rules at that point in time was we couldn't utilize anything in the pit that wasn't utilized on the record. They would not have any synthesizers. They had to have live musicians as part of the rules. And so when you have people who aren't necessarily in the music space and not necessarily on top of the technology, they go back to what works.
Yeah.
And recorded pictures are so much about emotion.
Sure.
Whatever that emotion is, that if these guys feel like that's the best way to do it, that's what they'll go to, because that's what they can count on.
Absolutely, but there's a lot of progressive film scores now that are completely and entirely synthesized. Icarus, for instance, it's not entirely synthetic, but there's a lot of synthesized sound, intentionally synthesized sounds.
And that's the other side of the camp, I think. That,
totally.
That those who now have embraced technology, and also with budget pressure,
can be sometimes, or it's just a creative choice.
Yeah, it just
that's
makes
how they
sense to go do, or whoever the person is they're working with. So it's interesting how it can be project to project, the philosophy changes, and you have to be aware of all those. And
that's kind of one of the great things about working in film and TV scoring is that it can be something completely different every time we work on something. And for me, I work on a lot of different styles of music, and because like you said, it's sometimes they want the more traditional. They want something that is just everybody in a room playing at once. That's it. It's basically 3 mics and we're done. Versus something super hybrid, lots of synthesizers, lots of drums, but we also want some orchestra for some emotional moments. It's everything in between now.
Is there a big difference? And I know it's hard to generalize. Excuse me. Between film and TV.
Not a lot.
As a mixer, you're mixing what they give you.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, in terms of, obviously there's the time span typically is 7 days from start to finish of one episode.
Right.
So, they've shot it, they're doing effects, they're having us write music for it, and then we have to score it and then mix it and send it off. So that's all done every 7 days. Like, for instance, we did a show called Once Upon a Time for ABC Disney. And that show had we had a scoring budget, so we actually would record an orchestra. But we obviously don't have the budget every week to record 100 players, but we wanted to sound like that sometimes. So the composers took a lot of time throughout the week to put a lot of great samples together that we could blend in later and record 25, 30 players, something like that, which is a decent group, but not big enough for some of the sound we needed, to supplement in with sampled sounds and mix it together. So sometimes you have to, because of time and because of budget, you have to kind of cut the corners a little bit in terms of
Did you work
what
there?
you can get on. Yeah, that's Air. That's Air London. That's the Lyndhurst Hall, yeah. This is a film called Life that we did last year, sci-fi film. And there's Jeff Foster, who's an amazing engineer from London, who does a lot of recording in there for Hans Zimmer. He likes to put guys up here in the mezzanines, and he puts trumpet players and horn players and stuff like that. I had everybody down in the room. This is about just shy of 100 people.
Damn.
Yeah.
Heck of an experience.
That was a lot. That was incredible.
And that was a sci-fi movie?
Yeah.
How do you make all those other sounds, the sci-fi sounds? You use like sample packs, or
there's
you
a
create
lot. There's a team involved in
Eurorack. I bet Eurorack.
Okay, so when I come into the process, obviously there's still a lot to do, but by the time it gets to me, the composer's done a lot. In this case, this was Johan Ekstrand. He's a Swedish composer, and he's an Eurorack fanatic. So he's got walls of this stuff. And he's built all kinds of amazing textures for this film. You know, it's obviously got a lot of tension and thriller, horror aspects to it. So he's just built these great, you know, sort of crazy sounds on his Eurorack synthesizer, and he's got all that stuff now in his Pro Tools rig, and he's sent it off to me. But then we record all of this on top of it. Oh. So what we did we did something really cool in this film. We had. After the orchestra played, there was one particular cue, which was the end of the film, piece of music where I took the orchestra and they did this long bending note, which was just a slide from the top of the fretboard all the way down to the bottom, just digging in as hard as I could with the bows, just and getting this slow pitched effect. And then I took this Eurorack module called it's a company called Mutable Instruments, the Clouds it's called. And it's got a pitch bend function in it, where it's just a knob that you can turn down all the way to sort of like, it just sounds like funky brown note, like we were talking about the other day.
Oh, you had to go there.
So we had basically just run a stereo mix of the orchestra through this thing and you know, did the pitch bending manually, and then sent that back into Pro Tools and then mixed that in with the orchestra. So we would do cool audio manipulation of it once we were done recording it as well, just to give it even more sort of out of this world kind of sounds.
Wow. Yeah. Some people might not be familiar with a Eurorack. It's a modular synthesizer.
Right.
And they're become pretty popular.
Really popular right now.
So instead of like a synthesizer that have all these knobs up here, you have little almost like 500 series modules.
It's exactly
that you slide
like the
in
500 series thing. Yeah, it's very addicting, like the 500 series, where you go, oh, it's only $200 for a module, or it's only $100 for a module. I'll just filling up racks, you know, like in 2 seconds.
Wow.
So the key question is, do you have residuals on Fortnite?
On Fortnite, no, sadly.
Unfortunately.
I knew you would talk about that.
Maybe I need to talk to you later.
So how did that involvement come along with this?
Well, that was I mean, obviously, I didn't know about the video game actually when it came to me, but my assistant was like a huge fan of the game, and he's like, "This is big." I was like, "Oh, cool. All right, great." And the composers were Marco Beltrami and Pinar Toprak, a really amazing female composer. And she came to me and said, "Yeah, we've got a couple other things going on, and we've just wrapped this one up. We'd like you to mix it." And they went to Nashville and recorded the orchestra. So Nashville sent us all of the recorded material and all of the electronic tracks, the drums and the synthesizers and all that stuff. And we had about a week, I think, to mix it. Actually, the game already came out. They had already been out, but without music.
Wow.
I guess it was that popular of a video game that the players didn't mind that there was no music in it. And then there was an update with all of our mixes in it.
Where in Nashville did you record the strings?
I didn't go personally, but it was at Ocean Way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so it was brass and winds and strings. It was a full room.
You're in what you do and the multitude of things that you do. Does sound design or instrumentation, your additional skill sets, do they come into play at different times?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the composer and producer. Some of these guys are really great producers on their own and they don't need much else. They just go, you know what, I've sat with this thing for months. I couldn't figure out how to mix this thing because I'm too close to it.
Right.
I need to give it to you. And then there's other guys who say, I think I need some help at the beginning stage here to kind of figure out how this needs to be sculpted and what we can do here. Maybe some ideas on instrumentation or even how to record this. Who should we record? What should we record? And so I'll get involved sometimes more early on than at the mixing stage to sort of discuss, well, how should we record it? What should we record? Or yes, sometimes playing on it in advance or during the mixing stage. So some guys like to have me more involved like that, some guys don't. It just kind of depends. Like on Life, for instance, I was pretty involved from the recording process through the mixing process, not just as an engineer, but also producing, giving ideas as to what to do with the orchestra and how we can maybe manipulate it with, you know, the Eurorack synthesizers and stuff like that afterwards. And he was, of course, super excited about that
very
stuff.
Cool. Yeah, of course. Give some advice to the audience for those who may not know about the space, may want to know about the space.
Sure.
Who does it appeal to? How do you look for it? What do you find? Give us your general point of view.
It's space in terms of what?
In terms of going into being able to mix, score, work in television, film.
Sure.
Those folks in audio who may not have ever thought about that.
Well, it's very different from record making. Maybe it's not very different from record making these days. But you know, the pace of it is, you know, you think it's sort of the hurry up and wait dynamic where you think you're going to start Saturday and you don't get something until Monday, but then they need it Monday night. So
deal with it.
The deadline doesn't always change, but when things come to you, widely changes from minute to minute.
Yeah.
So it can be really stressful. You know, a lot of it for me is just I work, you know, 24 hours a day if I can. You know, I'll go in there on Sunday to Fab Factory because I have a room next door to Dave, and
We're the only people there on
I know,
Sundays.
and I'll go there on Sunday, and Dave will be in there, and he'll be like, "What are you doing? I mean, what are you doing here? Like, you know, come on, Dave Pensado, what are you doing here?" But that's typical for me. You know, I'm in there 24 hours a day because it's just. That's just
the nature of it.
I've had a built-in anxiety, you know, daily of just who's going to call me saying, you know, we need this changed, and I'm recording an orchestra somewhere else or something.
What's different about the pathway into your profession from when you started and today? Like a young kid coming out of school might not want the hours that we have in the record making side, might want to actually have a family, and How would that person get into the space that you're in? The overall space, in other words, not just what you do, but post-production, all of that.
There's a couple of, I think there's, I can't remember the name of the website, but it's called Film Music something. There is an actual referral website that says, you know, looking for an assistant, looking for an intern, that sort of thing. I mean, we have at Fab Factory even, we have an intern, you know, program where we bring people through and that sort of thing. And I think, I don't know, for me, traditionally still that seems to be the way
Start at the
that
bottom,
it works.
in like the proverbial mail room and work your way up.
I mean, I have a guy who helps me a lot now, who assists me. His name is Mike, and I just met him from mixing for another guy, and he was actually his assistant at the time, and eventually decided he, you know, wanted to go out on his own, and I started hiring him. So you know, I meet people different ways, but I think, yeah, as far as the traditional way of just, you know, interning in a studio, being around, being, you know, the coolest guy, the karate chop guy on the pillow, whatever, you know, thing is.
Would you say a person should find someone like, say, an Alan Meyerson that they admire and try to work for Alan, or should they choose a house that's known for doing this and go there?
Yeah,
I
think I don't know that you can put the target and draw the line that easily. You know, like I think for me, you know, I've always admired, you know, guys like Alan Meyerson and mixers like that, and I've always liked film music as a medium, but I didn't necessarily know at a certain time that was something I was going to be doing as a career. So I think if you love music and you really want to be around it, you should do anything you can to be around it, because you'll find some pathway that will become your. For me, that's how I see it.
And because some fundamentals don't change. You're going to need to know how to mix.
Yeah.
You're going to need to know how to get around the studio.
Yeah.
You're going to need to know how to network.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of what's changed has been so dramatic, but some of the fundamentals have not.
No.
You still got to figure out how to get there and where to learn it and how to move and get through it. And
you know, a guy said to me the other day, I think it was, I won't name names, but he was an intern, and he said to me, you know, I want to be you.
Wow.
How do I be you?
It's a compliment.
It is, but in a way, I think it's too direct. You know, I think a lot of it should just come from just being there, being cool, helping out in any way you can, and that I think rubs off on people the right way, and they go, yeah, well, I want this guy around me. He's cool, you know, like he knows about projects I'm working on that I don't know about because he's hip and you know what I mean? Like he knows cool plugins I don't know about. I need this guy around more.
I can help you there.
And you know, that's why, Dave, you want to be my assistant?
Yeah. You can work it out. But I think that's a challenge to this generation. Our audience is a pretty wide set of folks from, you know, kids, 16, 17, younger, and enthusiasts who could be 40 or 50 years old or more. But one of the things that's dangerous about the ability to get to technology is that you can convince yourself you know something because you looked it up on YouTube or you did whatever and you somehow got some information, and that just does not make you an expert. That makes you informed. But that's not the same as knowing how to handle it. It proves nothing.
It really does.
And you can learn the hard way that and waste
really
a lot of time.
I mean, a perfect example is like the film Icarus. The composer, Adam Peters, is, you know, he pulled every trick in the book he could to do anything he could on his own and with his own resources to make a film score that sounded, you know, really great, really expensive. With a budget that probably wasn't, you know, ideal for him. Sure. Because it was a documentary. But he just with the idea, the concept of, you know, okay, well, I can come up with a great melody, and I'm a cello player, so I'm going to play this on the cello, and he played a lot of this stuff himself. Those resources were, you know, it didn't take technology to make that a success, you know what I mean? It was just, it was his ability to sort of think with a good idea.
Right.
You know?
Do you have a signature or anything that is a Jason LaRocca signature?
That feeds into my question.
I think, you know, for me, what I feel maybe is one of the things that, I don't know if it would be called a signature, but I try not to put a stamp on things in a way that I feel is imposing on what I'm mixing.
Your signature may be no signature.
Maybe that's what, I mean, I don't know.
Understanding.
It's like, you know, when somebody comes in to listen to my mixes and says, you know, well, can we change this? I'm not sure if the reverb might be too much, and it's something that I'm easily ready to just delete and get rid of, you know, and I think that maybe that's not quite a signature, but that to me, I feel has been a big part of what's benefited me and gotten me further along in what I'm doing.
You're serving the project.
Dave's got his hand up.
Future.
Dave.
I think your signature is your use of reverbs. You use reverbs. And you know it. And you and Alan are brilliant at reverbs. Just the way you put the reverbs in the back speaker and create that space. And so beyond that, both of you guys have a good sense of space. So, for example, I notice like if you have a vocal, it'll be in the same space as the music. And I hear some R2 reverbs. I hear some pretty cool reverbs going on. Yeah. What's your philosophy about reverbs? And do you tweak them? Like I know you're meticulous. So how deep do you go on the tweaking? Do you just set pre-delay and decay time?
It's funny. I go through periods of being very tweaky about reverbs because I'll get, you know, a couple of new reverbs and I'll use them exhaustingly, and then they'll just sort of end up in my template and kind of stay put as they are for a little while, and then I'll sort of clean house and start over again. But in surround, it sort of depends on what it is. In surround, when we're mixing film music, we have a lot of space to fill, you know, and we've got the music coming primarily from the front and then filling out into the back, and we want ambience and we want sense of size and depth. So I tend to use 4, 5, or 6 reverbs on a single sound, and I'll put them in different places, you know, within the room. And sometimes I'll put, you know, 2 in the back, but I'll flip 1 from the other so that the image is the opposite, and just different thing, whatever I can do to
flip.
Well, just the panning of it.
Oh, okay.
So if one's panned, you know, left, right, I'll pan the other one, right, left.
Okay.
And whatever it takes to sort of get that sound to really feel like it's filling, you know, a massive theater.
Are you going for the reality of the space, or are you going for a cartoon caricature of the space?
Both.
Are you trying for reality?
Well, like, for instance, like with Air, when we recorded at Air, that reverb time is sort of built into the sound. I mean,
The room
it's
itself.
got a lot of reverb sort of built into that hall, and anything you don't really want to mess with that. You know what I mean? It's like any sort of reverb you put on, it's just going to get in the way of that beautiful sound. So with a sound like that, we don't really touch it much. But sometimes there's a cello solo, for instance, where I think actually in that film Life, where we wanted it to sound like it was sort of in outer space, and we put like this 15-second reverb, you know, a Lexicon 224 reverb on it. And sometimes we want it to sort of feel like it's really pulling away from the reality and going more into something not real at all, you know, and we'll manipulate it. So like Valhalla Shimmer, for instance, which I feel like is a perfect example of a reverb that's like got that great sort of, it's not real, it's what is this, you know what I mean?
I still, thanks for the recommendation on R4 by Exponential. That's
an amazing reverb.
Reverbs were that and compression were one of the last things I kind of mastered. I was using them, but I didn't know what I was doing. But
well, you were telling me about Limitless. I need to learn more about the Limitless.
Yeah, I like that too.
Multi-band compression.
And then
stuff.
Greg Wells hit me yesterday to Gullfoss.
Oh, Gullfoss.
Gullfoss, yeah.
Yeah. That thing is insane. I mean, I guess it's an EQ.
Yeah,
technically, right?
It's more than that, though. I'm learning it.
It's really wild.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be pretty useful on a lot of things. Before, I would use, well, I actually just recently got, I know it's been around for a while, but the Clairphonic EQ is pretty great.
Beast.
And also the Cush transformer plugins.
Oh, I use those A and B all the time.
Are just amazing.
Let me ask you a question. I don't mean to monopolize her. We're in an Atmos room. What the damn difference between Atmos 5.1, 7.1, 200 to 1, DTS? I mean,
you know,
and why should I care?
More is more, I guess.
I'm figuring out stereo.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
You know, I think, when we're mixing music, we're just mixing it in stereo or 5.1, and a lot of the times, for me at least, that's how it is. Some dubbing mixers, the guys who will get it after I've mixed the music, they'll take the music and mix it to dialogue. They will sometimes ask me for certain elements separated out because they want to put them in their Atmos panning.
Okay.
I don't do that on a music basis just because I don't, we haven't had the need to. We've never been asked. I haven't been asked to, personally. So it's just another advancement of the medium. You know, I think Atmos sounds really cool. I mean, when I go to see a film and I hear, all the tiny raindrops falling on their own speaker. I mean, it's a pretty great sound, but is it always needed for all musical things? I don't know that it is. So. You know?
Before Batter's Box, this is probably the most critical question because I know the kind of time you must have put in, research, copyright, searches, so on and so forth. What was the impetus to naming it LaRocca Center?
Maybe I'll get in trouble. I don't know.
Don't say it out loud.
I actually thought it would be a good thing if I did get in trouble. So, I figured, if somebody hits me up and says, either Jay-Z or,
the Rockefeller family or something.
Or the Rockefellers.
Yeah, exactly.
Our friend Burbage, he named Air LA after George Martin's studio, so that George would sue him and he'd get to meet George. And George never sued him, and he never got to meet him.
It's a really good idea.
That's a long way to go.
That's a true story. That's a true story.
It's a really good
All right,
idea.
you ready?
I'm more than ready. I got inside info, Herb.
Okay. Whenever you do that usually means inside information. Was it from Mike Lavinati?
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's the right answer.
Yes. Brass.
Air.
Virtual synthesizers.
They're fantastic.
Vocals.
Frank Sinatra.
Strings.
Sampled strings.
He's trying to throw me off. You catch that, Herb? I caught it. Headphones.
Make the mix good.
Saturation.
Air lo-fi.
Wow, that's a hard plug-in. Surround sound.
What comes to mind? Turn it up.
Reverb pre-delay.
sometimes your enemy.
The cheapest piece of gear you used on a big movie.
Ooh. I remember. Probably.
Tambourine.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
Actually, yeah.
Did you say tambourine?
The tambourine might actually be more expensive than what I was thinking of.
Yeah, but that's not a piece of gear.
I was thinking of a Phase 90 I used on a mix
MXR.
once, yeah, just to, out of Pro Tools, back through it and back into Pro. I don't know why I did it, but it just seemed to be a good idea. It sounded great.
I can see the
Well, what you didn't know is he's figured out how to use a tambourine as a plug-in. So he's actually turned the tambourine into gear.
Oh, you know what actually I got? Is like, have you ever seen those cigarette box?
guitar
turned into
amps.
just
Yeah.
I used one of those once
They have
too.
those at Blackbird. in
Those are
Nashville.
like, $50 or something like that.
When you combine that with the tambourine,
Dude.
it's a whole
Dude.
The great part about today to me is oftentimes in places that people in our audience, or even some professionals may think, I don't know how to figure out this space. It takes folks like you to illuminate the path. And because you really have run the whole gamut of what a musician and a performer and an artist and a producer and a composer has done and found a place along the way for all that stuff, which is exactly you guys' opportunity to do as well. So, thanks for the insight. When we do some of our live event stuff, would you ever come out and be on panels with us?
I would love to. Get in some trouble.
Because we have a number of things between live events and also a number of schools who like to have people come down and lecture. So if that's of any interest to you,
I would love to.
arrange
I think it's amazing, too, what you guys are doing with this, by the way.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
I'm a huge fan of the show, and I love watching all this stuff, and your ITLs and everything, so this is awesome.
You guys should do an ITL since you're...
Yeah, we should.
We should.
Let's
Reverb
do it.
one.
On the golf
On
holes.
tambourines.
Golf
On
holes.
tambourine.
Well, the golf, and use the golf holes, whatever you say.
I can't say it.
Me either, so that's why I said it.
It's a waterfall in Iceland or something.
In the spirit of honesty, Greg actually spelled it wrong, so I spent half a day trying to look up the wrong thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
I read it
Greg
as
that,
golf
'cause-
floss at first, which I thought was kind of cool, but it's not that.
It's a Greg Wells thing. Take us home, Dave.
Wow, you know what? Quite often I've told you the importance of surrounding yourself with talented people and good people, and you're seeing an example here where we're studio roommates, and I can walk down and borrow a cup of audio sugar or plug in milk and at any time of the night and trade information. And I think you should get yourself one, because it's so hard to start a career alone. It's almost impossible, but it's even more difficult to sustain a career. And thanks, buddy.
Thank you guys for
We'll
having
see you
me.
next week.
Peace.